Webb Owens, you know, if he said it once, he said it 1,000 times. He would come up to me and every time he saw me, he'd say, well, Bob, I'm in NAACP, I'm in SCLC, I'm in CORE, and I'm in SNCC, right? I'm in anything that's going to get this monkey off my back, right? So he was telling me that he did not want to hear, you know, oh, well, we're SNCC and we're not this, right? Or we're NAACP youth and we're not that, right? So he was telling me that he wanted everybody working together, right? So that's how it penetrated my own consciousness. But so that there were discussions around that idea, and luckily because Medgar was also a person who thought movement and broadly, and Dave Dennis, who had come in to handle the core operations around the Freedom Rides, thought the same way. And so did Aaron Henry, who was the chair of the state conference of branches of the NAACP, but also the chief sort of liaison with King, right? So you had all four of those organizations. You have representation there that actually could agree that, well, look, we're going to have an umbrella. So any place we go in the state, we'll be able to say, they will be able, you're talking to somebody about voter registration and they say, oh, I'm in NAACP, and we'll be able to say, yes, they're part of this program, right? So COFOC came in as an umbrella, and then Dave and I were co-directors, so the actual running of the program fell to SNCC and CORE, but primarily to SNCC. CORE required, the national CORE required a geographical identity. So they decided they would do the 4th Congressional District, which at that time was Meridian through Philadelphia and on into, I think, parts of Hinds County, right? And so CORE ran that. It included Canton and some other counties up there, right? So that's how it got started.
In the early 60s, you had several organizations operating in Mississippi. The NAACP had the most fertile infrastructure. They have been here the longest. Ella Baker, who established nationally the youth and college division of the NAACP, was no longer at the national office, and she had this concept that if you empower young people and you equip them with the knowledge and the tools, that they would jumpstart the movement in ways in which, at that time, Thurgood Marshall and other individuals at the NAACP, they believed in a more gradualist movement. They believed that you fight the battles in court, you let the court decide. But Ella Baker, who was a visionary, thought that we should have a different type of movement. And so over time, she came up with this concept that evolved to become what we now know as the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, which empowered primarily college students to get engaged in ways in which they were not engaged and that the NAACP discouraged, because Thurgood Marshall and many of the leaders of the NAACP, they didn't believe that young people should take to the streets. And so Ella Baker came up with a methodology, and she trained young people to do so. So SNCC came to town, and because of her relationship and her contact with NAACP in Mississippi, they worked with NAACP officials, Amzie Moore and Aaron Henry and CeCe Bryant. So you have SNCC, you have the NAACP. And then you had the Congress on Racial Equality, who also organized the Freedom Riders, and who black and whites would load up in buses in the north, the Trailway and Greyhound buses, and travel to the south. And so they established a presence in Mississippi through Dave Dennis. And so now you have SNCC, NAACP, and CORE. And the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, which was started in Alabama because NAACP was banned from the state of Alabama. The state of Alabama was demanding our membership list. And because we refused to turn over the membership list, it was against the law to be a member of the NAACP in the state of Alabama. And so Rosa Parks and Ralph Abernathy and Joseph Lowry and King, they organized the Southern Christian Leadership Conference as a vehicle they used, because many of them were NAACP officials. Rosa Parks was a secretary of the NAACP when she sat down on the bus. But they had to create another organization because they were banned from existing in Alabama. And the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, because of the oratorical skills of Martin Luther King, began to grow in prominence, and they want to establish a presence in Mississippi. Their presence wasn't as strong. But 3 of the 4 organizations began to carry out programs in the state of Mississippi to force the question around the state being a segregated society. What the leaders of that movement realized, Medgar Evers and Aaron Henry from the NAACP and Bob Moses and Hollis Watkins with SNCC and Dave Dennis and Mickey Schwerner with CORE, that their national organizations were raising money based on the work in Mississippi, but when they were locked up or individuals were put in jail, the bail money was not coming as fast as it should to get people out of jail. The type of support, national support, was not happening. So they decided to create the Committee of Federated Organizations, COFO, as an umbrella group that they all would operate to send a message that if individuals want to support the movement in Mississippi, give it to COFO. And the local organizers in the state would decide how those funds would support the movement and to ensure that people got out of jail timely, because they were concerned that if you were jailed, you could be killed. And so COFO was created, and it was started actually in the office that I currently reside in on Lynch Street, and they later moved across the street and established an office across the street. And COFO became a very viable and strong vehicle for all of these individuals. And they understood that there was no organizational supremacy of them, that the work had to get done, and whoever was available to do the work, they had to get the work done, but they created an umbrella to support that work so that when individuals like Harry Belafonte and Sidney Poitier and Bob Dylan wanted to support the work here, they had a place to come, they had a vehicle to use, and they had local contacts they can work with.